now it should work. The problem is that I had a window with my Twitch open and I was reading myself as I was speaking. We are back with some Vue.js org docs and we are looking at the components in depth and at the section named Provide Inject. That's something new that we have not seen before. Let's see. Let's talk about prop drilling. Prop drilling. Usually, when we need to pass data from the parent to a child component, we use props. However, imagine the case where we have a large component tree and a deeply nested component needs something from a distant ancestor component. With only props, we would have to pass the same prop across the entire parent chain, like so. Down here, down here, down here. So we'll have to pass a prop from the root to the footer and then the same prop from the footer to the deep child, just so that this child have access to some property which is probably declared at the root level. Notice, although the footer component may not care about these props at all, it still needs to declare and pass them along just so the child can access them. If there is a longer parent chain, more components would be affected along the way. This is called props drilling and definitely isn't fun to deal with. Yeah, that's definitely not fun to deal with, I can promise you. We can solve props drilling with provide and inject. A parent component can serve as a dependency provider for all its descendants. Any component in the descendant tree, regardless of how deep it is, can inject dependencies provided by components up in its parent chain. The key words here are provide and inject. And here we are, the root component is providing some data and a deep child is injecting that very same data into itself. Provide. To provide data to a component's descendants, use the provide function. Here we have a script setup. We import provide from Vue and the provide function is called with a message key and a hello value. So it's a key and then a value. If not using script setup, make sure provide is called synchronously inside setup. We import provide again, and then in the setup hook, we call provide in the same way as before. The provide function accepts two arguments. The first argument is called the injection key, right here, which can be a string or a symbol. The injection key is used by descendant components to look up the desired value to inject. A single component can call provide multiple times with different injection keys to provide different values. The second argument is the provided value. The value can be of any type, including reactive state such as refs. Import ref provide const count, we declare a ref count, and then we provide the count ref like so. Providing reactive values allows the descendant components using the provided value to establish a reactive connection to the provider component. Interesting. So that basically means that the reactivity that we generate here is maintained after providing the value. App level provide. In addition to providing data in a component, we can also provide at the app level. When we create the app. Also, okay. We import create app, we create the app, and then we do app.provide. And that works the same as before. App level provides are available to all components rendered in the app. This is especially useful when writing plugins, as plugins typically wouldn't be able to provide values using components. Alright, inject. To inject data provided by an ancestor component, use the inject function. We have our script setup, we import inject from view, and then we inject data like so. We call our inject function, passing the message key, and then that returns the value. If the provided value is a ref, it will be injected as is and will not be automatically unwrapped. This allows the injector component to retain the reactivity connection to the provider component. Let's take a look at a full example. We have our app. Here, I'll skim through the details. Here, we declare a ref message with a value hello, and we provide it with a key message. And then we have a child, we have an input and a child, and the child has grandchild, doesn't do anything else but render the grandchild, and the grandchild calls inject from view or imports inject from view, and then calls it as a function, providing the key that we have seen before, and it returns the message. And this message is rendered here. And if we take a look here, there is an input with a vModel message, which means that we can change the value of the message of this reactive property. So we can make it say bye, and the reactivity is maintained, even though we are using the provide inject pattern. Again, if not using script setup, inject should only be called synchronously inside setup. Like provide before, inject also the same. Inside the setup, we need to call inject, and as it says here, it needs to be called synchronously. Injection default values. By default, inject assumes that the injected key is provided somewhere in the parent chain. In the case where the key is not provided, there will be a runtime warning. If we want to make an injected property work with optional providers, we need to declare a default value similar to props. Alright, so that's the default value. After the key, the second argument is the default value. Value will be default value if no data matching message was provided. Easy enough. In some cases, the default value may need to be created by calling a function or instantiating a new class. To avoid unnecessary computation or side effects in case the optional value is not used, we can use a factory function for creating the default value. Alright. Factory function is this. We have an arrow function here, and then the arrow function takes in no arguments and returns a new instance of this expensive class. I see. So instead of just using this as default value, we use a function that returns this. I see. So if the value, if there's a key provided in an ancestor component, that would then never run. So we'll save this computation. That would only run if we need to use a default value. Alright, working with reactivity. When using reactive provide inject values, it is recommended to keep any mutations to reactive state inside of the provider whenever possible. Yeah, that makes sense. This ensures that the provided state and its possible mutations are co-located in the same component, making it easier to maintain in the future. So what it's saying here is if we have to mutate the reactive state of the provider, that should be done in the provider component, not in the injecting component. Or at least that's what I understood. There may be times when we need to update the data from an injector component. In such cases, we recommend providing a function that is responsible for mutating the state. So, okay, let's see an example. Inside provider component, we have a function which mutates this ref, and then we have a provide which has this key and then provides an object with a location, which is the value, and the update location, which is the function to mutate that value. And then in the injector component, we have an inject with the same key as before provided, which returns location and update location. All right. Okay. Finally, you can wrap the provided value with read-only if you want to ensure that the data passed through provide cannot be mutated by the injected component. I see. So we import read-only from view, and then we create a ref. And when we provide that ref as read-only count as key, we wrap it in a read-only. So, well, that's by doing that, we ensure that this count cannot be mutated. If we try to mutate this count wrapped in a read-only, there will be some error or some warning or something like that. Working with symbol keys. So far, we have been using string injection keys in the example. If you are working in a large application with many dependency providers, or you are authoring components that are going to be used by other developers, it is best to use symbol injection keys to avoid potential collisions. It's recommended to export the symbols in a dedicated file. If you don't know what symbols are, look for some JavaScript documentation or something like that. You could look into symbol site javascript.info and read a little bit about what symbols are. By specification, object property keys might be either of string type or symbol type, not numbers. Symbol represents a unique identifier. That's kind of the thing you have to remember. Symbol represents a unique identifier. Unique. So that's why they are useful here. If we have a unique, if you use a symbol as a key, it means that we have these provided values labeled with a unique identifier, which is the symbol. And so we don't run into the risk of using the same key for two different provided values. It's recommended to export the symbols in a dedicated file. So we have some keys.javascript where we export constant named my injection key, which is a symbol, which is a new symbol. And then we in provided component import the key and we use it as a key for the provided data. And then in the injector component, we import the same key and we use it to inject the data. All right, very good, very interesting, this provide inject pattern. So next is gonna be async components, but that's gonna be the next video.